Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, naturally, we're going to be having issues, aren't we? Or will we? Alas, I think it has worked. Wonderful. Perfect. We're here. Episode 1, ladies and gentlemen, of the Push Start podcast. Now, what I will say is that this format is going to completely change over time. It will not look like this. It may not feel like this. It may not sound like this. But it's going to evolve naturally over time is the plan. And I didn't even have necessarily plans to stream today. I didn't have plans to start a podcast today. I was sitting last night, more or less, and I said, you know what? It's time. It's time that we get this started. Let's just get this going, yeah? Let's just make sure that we have this started. Why not? New year. I'm not a fan of New Year, New Me. But here we are. It just seemed like a good moment. And this is going to ideally be a weekly show, whether or not it's going to be at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, the format, the time, the look, the feel, everything about it can potentially change. That is all up in the air. But for now, at least we're live, right? So every week on Thursdays, you can expect to see something around this time. And I'm very excited for it. And we have a format for the show that I'm hoping helps to stand it out from a lot of the things that you typically see online. I didn't want to make another podcast where it's like, here's all of the headlines in the news. Yeah, of course we're going to be doing some of that. But I wanted to focus more to be around an opportunity to speak to some of those stories, some of those things going on in the industry. I wanted an opportunity to find the hidden stories that maybe not so many creators are talking about, just because it's not newsworthy, it's not as clickable as maybe it could be, those sorts of things. So I wanted to try to focus on a couple smaller stories there. And then I really wanted to spend time where the focus was on one or two major topics for the episode, right? And that would allow us to ideally have a bit more of an in-depth discussion on broader concepts within the industry, right? So for example, today we are going to be diving into, for example, Judas. Very excited about Judas, but there was an interview with Ken Levine that recently came out, and he raised some really interesting points. One was about the stagnation of games, one was about the struggles of AAA gaming. And so those are absolutely topics that I'm excited to dive into, and I hope that not 100% prepared for this episode here, but ideally we can try to have a little bit more nuanced conversations around certain things than maybe some other shows do, or maybe the way some other shows might want to do them. And of course, this is all a live show, so it's going to be fueled by a lot by you guys and where you want to pivot the discussion. So Detroit style pizza or New York style pizza. Why was that not an option? So both of those options are wrong, first off. But welcome, Cole. Thank you so much for stopping by. So, bite-sized stories. The first segment that I wanted to kick off with, and let me know, let's just test here on my own. I apologize for this. Okay, music sounds good. Music's at a reasonable volume. Sorry, Cole. I just gotta be honest with you. I have to be honest, I can't lie. I can't start the show off and the new year with a lie. But I hope that all of you had a very, what am I talking about? Getting right into stories. I hope that everybody had a wonderful and safe and fun, and if you did a holiday season, a good start to your new year. We're only on the 2nd, so if it didn't start out well, you still got time. I hope that everyone had a wonderful holiday season. If not, hopefully we can try to kick it into gear with some positive gaming stories that we're going to be sharing. And additionally, hopefully we can just make it better by hanging out, you and I. That's what all of this is about, right? That's what all of this is about. So channel news, quickly before we do get into it as well. We are, by we, I mean myself, I am working on my review for Indiana Jones. I have the game almost finished. I need to complete it, and I already have some costumes and stuff that I ordered to start doing some parodies for that review. Probably when it comes out, because it's been quite a while, I might make it shorter, a little bit more concise as far as the details of what we talk about. But ultimately, I'm very excited to get that out. I have some funny skits that I have planned. I have them all pretty much scripted out and mapped and ready to go. But we are working on that review. And of course, in 2025, I want to try to make reviews a bigger part of the channel. And anyone who's watched any of my reviews knows that it's very heavily inspired by the likes of Angry Joe. And part of that will bleed a little bit more, as I want to also do what similar to what he does, which is rapid fire reviews. So if he doesn't have time to do the full gambit, he will just do a faster, short snippet version where, you know, there's not really the face cam. It's kind of just the gameplay, talk over it, give their opinions, and then call it a wrap. So I want to try to interlace some of those style reviews as well, just so I can get more out, because as a person of one who doesn't do this as a full-time job, and especially because games are 30-40 hours, and I don't have the time to get through them. Hello, Slowlark. Hope you're good. I am good. That's why we're here. I hope you're doing well. I've been hoping you'd bring this spot after catching the previous iteration, and we're gonna make it better. We're gonna make it better. And why? If for no other reason, we're gonna make it consistent every week on Thursdays, unless something happens to me. But even I have a vacation that is planned coming up, and I already have it scheduled. Hello, Gray Monad. Monad, it's great to see you here as well. Welcome to the Push Start Podcast. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, so... Oh, fudge. What was I saying? If you've never seen my podcast, this is the way it goes. I always forget. Oh, right. Consistency. I have a plan to take a vacation. January, middle of January, coming up soon, actually. But I already have plans to pre-record an episode that will go live as a premiere. So it won't necessarily be live, but it will go live, and then you guys can all watch it together, interact in chat, and all that stuff. Probably a bit shorter, like 30 minutes or so, so it wouldn't be 100% live. But the goal here is to make this consistent every week, and again, might change. 6 p.m., 7 p.m., I don't know yet. It's going to be an hour show, hour and a half show, 2-hour show. That's up in the air. The look, this border here that I made ages ago and didn't pivot from, also probably will change. So there you go. But welcome, everybody, and thank you once again for stopping by. So, let's get into... First thing I wanted to do was just bite-sized stories. Bite-sized stories, basically a way to get through some of the things that I thought were interesting, but necessarily aren't topics I wanted to spend too long. And the way that I wanted to sort of run this section, bite-sized stories, is I am going to put in a poll. Or actually, we could do it this way. Engage with your audience. Let's start a Q&A. Alright, so in this Q&A, as we're going through bite-size stories, you can contribute to that Q&A. I actually don't know how Q&As work exactly on YouTube. I've never had the opportunity to use them before. So, but I will be monitoring those questions. And if there's any topic that you say, hey, let's go dive a little bit more into this, right? Then we can dive more into it. But this point of this is to get through some stories a little bit quicker. MTG Peddler, well, hot damn, Damarco is live. No, he's not. I don't know who that is. Never heard of him. Actually, that was going to be a thing I did for New Year's. I was going to change it to Damarco because that's how everyone spells it anyway. I was like, you know what? Give in. And then I said, no, it's Damarco, dude. Damn it. We're keeping it the way it is. And so here we are. Oh, and this episode, by the way, can't leave this out, is sponsored by Plain White Mug. if you don't watch the Renegade Realm podcast, which is every Tuesday starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which I do guest star on Red Wolf Renegade's channel, then you wouldn't get that joke. But tune in. I'm on that every single week on Tuesdays. And we have Plain White Mug. But it's sponsored, not actually, by Tea and Absinthe. If you, like me, are a tea drinker that likes to leave your infuser in because we don't drink it the right way, Tea and Absinthe is a really cool website where you can find all sorts of... it's just a small tea-loving group of nerds. And so you can find all sorts of, like, fandom-themed teas. They have Avatar: The Last Airbender, there's a Doctor Who one, I think there's a Steven Universe one. This one is called... Shoot, which one is this called? The Road So Far. And it is blackberry maple, I believe. And absolutely delicious. Plain White Mug, coming to a Damarco Dude shop near you. Maybe. Welcome, Red Wolf Renegade, to episode 1 of the Push Start podcast. So, I wanted to get into my first story here, because this is one I think is pretty exciting. And that's that EA does not care about Dark Souls. Have you guys heard this? EA doesn't care at all about Dark Souls. And we've seen that the Dark Souls, of course, Dead Space. EA doesn't care about Dead Space. Have you seen this article? EA does not care about Dead Space at all. In fact, they tried to pitch a Dead Space 4. And this is maybe 10 days old, I saw this article was. They did not want to do it. They were not interested whatsoever. And they specifically stated that they wanted to make sure that, for example, the Dead Space remake hit 5 million sales, but it only got 2 million, and therefore wasn't worth it. Yes, Ted Wolf. Ted Wolf on the Push Ted podcast. When Red joins this show, Plain White Mugs. This actually had a snowman face on it at one point. It did have a snowman face on it at one point, and then it just smudged off as I watched it because it was a very cheap, like, Target mug. But it holds my tea, and damn fine tea at that. So, yeah, Dead Space apparently, EA wanted to reach 5 million in sales for the Dead Space remake. It didn't reach that, and that's why we realized that they were not going to get a Dead Space 2 remake, which a lot of people were really clamoring for, and the game has good reviews. If we take a look, the game had a, 89 on Metacritic. That's as of the story that I'm citing here, coming from Forbes. 89 on that's a good score, but because it didn't hit the sales numbers, EA decided to can it. And then when the idea of a Dead Space 4 was brought up, also decided to can it. Now, one question that I immediately think of is, was that partially due to the release of Callisto Protocol, right? And it might seem a bit strange, but between the underwhelming sales of the Dead Space remake and the reception of... well, I say, old chap, it's time for tea. And you can get your tea at the unsponsored teaandabsinthe.com. I think it's .com. I'm not sure. But it's cool. Check them out. I like supporting these small little things. Maybe I should do a tea giveaway. Every episode, that was one thing that I was going to do for this is, hey, that blue number, welcome, and thank you for stopping by. We're not going to get through our bite-sized stories anytime soon as we're supposed to. This is the problem with doing a live show and having massive ADHD. You ever have... on the way home, I was driving home from work today, and I don't know what mood hit me, but it's, I don't know, it's like 40, 30 something degrees out right now. Dark out because it gets dark at 4:30 now, and I just rolled down all the windows. I was listening to old school Green Day songs, and then I just got hit with like cry. You ever have that mood where you're like laughing but you're crying at the same, and you have no idea why you're doing either? It just doesn't. That was my drive home today. So it's been a day. It's been a day. But anyway, yeah, I wanted to do a speaking of getting distracted, maybe I should do tea. I wanted to make sure that every episode I had kind of a unique tea that I brought up on stream. So this one is The Road Less Traveled by Tea and Absinthe. Dead Space. So, did well. I wonder if it was influenced by the Callisto Protocol. Because that game, of course, EA maybe looked at it and said, I don't know if this style of game, these more, especially because, again, while the industry seems to be trending away from open world games in the traditional sense, right? We're getting a lot more, I feel like, and I think this is a good thing. Take a look at what Indiana Jones and the Great Circle did, where it's a much more contained style of world building. You have a nice big open space that you can run around and find points of interest, and there's optional content to do. But the contrary to that is it's not so overwhelming that you're spending 40, 50 hours just wandering around from point to point. And I'm a fan of open world games. I think that there's some games that really works. For example, I love the way that Red Dead Redemption 2's map is. And most cases, my personal preference, most cases I would say that's not a style that I particularly like. That's not a style that I particularly like. However, in Red Dead 2 it works because it's a lot of downtime, it's a lot of, you are building that bond with your horse, and of course it has those more survival elements that are put into it, like having to eat, the weight gain that you can have, the horse bonding, and other things of that nature, the warmth and the cold. So because of those survival elements, I think it helps build out that world too. In a lot of other games, I don't think it works. For example, I got really quite bored of, for example, Horizon Zero Dawn. For that reason, I just thought the open world was boring. It felt more like a chore. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful, but it felt more like a chore to go from point to point, especially because when you clear out an enemy of those robotic monsters, didn't feel that refreshing. So because EA still is sort of in this open world bubble, that's where I was going with this point. You know, one of their most recent good releases, if you look back at EA's releases, EA's not having a good recent history, are they? I mean, Respawn has completely moved away from Titanfall. Now they're more or less stuck with, and I say stuck because I feel like I think it's been said, correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but I believe they said they've really wanted to go back to Titanfall, but they have Apex Legends, and they're not pivoting away from that anytime soon, as far as we can tell, even though it seems to be dying down a little bit from the outside looking in. I don't really hear the chatter or buzz around Apex anymore, if at all. But that might just be because I'm not involved in those communities, right? And we've also seen them they're really locked into the next Star Wars game, which Star Wars Jedi lost Stig Asmussen. Asmussen? Sorry, Stig. Apologize for pronouncing your name wrong. But the lead on that, who he said, he's like, I want this game to be a trilogy. That was always part of his plan. And now suddenly they don't have that. They don't have that lead to complete the vision. So a little bit concerning there. Dragon Age the Veilguard, of course. I mean, we saw how that game released. It wasn't good. What else do they have? Sims DLC? Of course, there's sports catalog of games. That always does well. But there you go. I do that literally every single day. Sometimes you just need a good laugh cry and you have no idea why. And then you look out and you're looking around the world and you're like, hey, maybe the Joker from Batman was right. Just embrace the insanity, and you just do it more. And whatever mood that is, just cry laughing while you're jamming out to some 2000s punk music. It's a vibe. And it was my vibe for today. And honestly, it was good. That's what got me fueled to come back to this podcast, because otherwise probably would have dropped it. But here we are, and I'm grateful for all of you for stopping by and joining in on this. So let me know your thoughts about Dark Souls. That's about Dark Souls. Why do I keep calling it Dark Souls? Dead Space. Unfortunately, we're not getting enough. EA's not interested. That really sucks. I wonder if the design was going to be another linear format. I'm not sure, but there you go. So next story, Ubisoft. This one I actually need to pull up specifically. Remember NFTs? Do you guys remember NFTs? Those stupid things that you could say. Well, I don't need to explain them. Most of you probably know exactly what they are. Well, Ubisoft just decided that they're not done with NFTs. They're not. They're still making them. Why? I have no idea. I'm also amazed that the stream is actually working because I forgot to hardwire my internet in today. So if anything goes wrong, that's why. I just jinxed the rest of the stream though. Keep that in mind. Now, this is an interesting one. So I need to pull this one up specifically because it's Ubisoft released, you think the cash cow's a sports game / sim, that's exact. So we are going to dive into Slowlark. That is a phenomenal point. We're going to dive into that because that's exactly what one of the things we're going to be talking about today is Judas, and what Ken Levine had a recent interview that he brought up in Judas. One of the things that he brought up was specifically how he was grateful to Rockstar Games because Judas is Take-Two. He was grateful to Rockstar Games because it allowed them to take a risk with Judas and the amount of time that we know that Judas is taking. So how that, and that's exactly what, and we'll dive more into that, but that's exactly what allowed Obsidian to experiment. And that's how we got some really great experiences like Pentiment, which I haven't played Pentiment, and like Grounded, which I did really like Grounded. But Ubisoft, they released an NFT game. Now, the thing about this is in order to play it, you need to actually buy an NFT. And they released their Ubisoft Quartz. Ubisoft Quartz was an absolute bust. If you don't remember what that is, it was basically, they were trying to sell you stupid microtransactions, but you could sell them back, as is the premise of NFTs. And it was just garbage. We know it was garbage. It was trash. Nobody liked it. And it made, I think, a couple $100 in total. It was quite frankly, it was embarrassing what Ubisoft Quartz launched to. But the idea was you can get some cosmetics in one game that come from one of their other games, right? Which they could do for free anyway. That's one of the problems with a lot of these NFTs and the artificial scarcity. So nobody understands why studios are still trying to milk this. I mean, even GameStop, as it mentions here, GameStop tried to launch their own marketplace. EA backpedaled. EA was one of the forerunners for NFTs, saying, we're going to get them out the door, it's going to be amazing, and everyone's going to love it, and it's the future of games. And they dropped it entirely. So, Ubisoft still sending great messages to gamers. This was probably one that was too far in development that they decided, hey, we're just going to let this one go, and we're not going to say anything about it, and hopefully nobody realizes it. People realized it, but shame on you, Ubisoft. Do better. Do better. Alright, so, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle was a pretty good release. I'm still working on my review for it, but all in all, it's a great game. The long and short of it is it's a great game. We've seen that in the reviews. You look at the Metacritic score. Great scores. Super fun, right? It apparently attracted Lucasfilm enough, the game did well enough, that they're already interested in exploring Indiana Jones more in gaming form. So, if you were a fan of Indiana Jones, now, of course, this comes with the worry, is Machine Games now going to get stuck with Indiana Jones? Or is Lucasfilm going to license it out to other studios, which I want to say is the direction that they would probably go. Of course, we're seeing Disney do that now that their exclusivity deal died with EA. Now they're starting to let Star Wars go to other studios. That's how we got Ubisoft's Star Wars game. And overall, it's better because different studios excel at different things. Bethesda's really unique, and the reason why I like covering Bethesda is because they have so many cool studios under their umbrella. You have Machine Games, you had Tango Gameworks, which thankfully they have a new home. It's very exciting that they're working on some new projects, so that's a nice update from Tango that came out recently. But you had Tango, you have Arcane, you have Machine Games, you have Bethesda Game Studios proper, two Bethesda Game Studios in the Maryland and of course the Austin team. You have Elder Scrolls Online with ZeniMax Online, and they're new. So Bethesda's always been a really cool company, I think, and that's why I like covering them. But hopefully with Indiana Jones, we're not going to see, because of course I'm still waiting. I'm waiting for Wolfenstein 3. Please, I love Indiana Jones. Really fun game. But Machine Games, it's time. I want to see it, right? Don't keep hoarding it for me. I want it, and I want it now. I'll wait a bit. So some good news if you enjoyed Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. And if you didn't, overall it has a positive thumbs up for me over on Steam. So, excited about that. I don't care what Blink 182 song got you to do this. You gotta stop streaming when I'm about to sleep. Jonas, you have to stop sleeping when I play stream and don't tell anybody. I would love an Indiana Jones game with Sean Connery as a companion. Cole, that's not a bad idea. I too would like to see an Indiana Jones game with Sean Connery. I would like to see, honestly, what I want to see more of, and I know Fortnite has kind of drained my will for this. This might be a really unpopular opinion. Somebody can find where I am right now in real time and just take me out. Just take me out for saying something like this. But Fortnite has kind of overdone it. However, what I will say is I would love to see some more crossover stuff between IPs in certain instances. For example, like Hitman and I wouldn't want to see it necessarily in Indiana Jones because that's a really interesting universe, but like Hitman, but it's an Indiana Jones inspired level. If we ever get another Hitman game, those types of things. I like that. When they did a great collaboration was Monster Hunter Worlds and The Witcher. They brought Geralt into Monster Hunter Worlds. Hitman and Assassin's Creed. Elder Scrolls. Elder Scrolls Hitman. Maybe like an arcane style. Maybe not necessarily Hitman, but like an arcane style. If you're a spin-off game set in the Elder Scrolls franchise where you're playing as a Dark Brother, because they've already done Dishonored, but you're a Dark Brotherhood assassin in the style of Arcane. Huh? Bethesda! Bethesda! Take notes! This brain's churning! It's raining! Do you see the smoke coming out? Oh, you can't because of headphones. That's why I keep headphones on during these streams. So you can't see the smoke coming out my ears when I'm thinking too hard. That's just the Dark Brotherhood with good... Exactly, Jonas. See, you understand. It's a great idea. Why haven't they thought of it? It's a no-brainer. I'll take my round of applause. It's okay. How is it going, Chris? Welcome and thank you for joining. Welcome to episode 1. And I want to say thank you to everybody here. If you could leave a like on the podcast to help get it started. Because again, the plan for this, I know a lot of people are just joining in. People are hopping in and out. Totally fine. Welcome. The plan for this is just my one goal for 2025. My one goal is that this is a consistent thing. I'm not going to hit every episode. I already know that because I might miss one for obvious reasons. Life gets in the way. But the goal is to make this show, if you get no other content in a month, this show will be here every week. That is my one goal for 2025. So, still going to change formatting. The look, everything you see around here with this layout that I haven't updated because I drafted it like a year and a half ago, probably will change. The style, the tone, the talking points, the way I do things on the show, everything is subject to change, but I'm just happy to get out here. Chris, welcome. Thank you for joining. And I hope that you had a wonderful I want to see more basketball hoops shot. That was cool, that video you sent me. I love that. It brings a smile. Gets me to smile. Morag Tong instead would be a bit more hipster. So monthly, is it going to be the first Friday of the month? No, it's going to be... The plan is to do Thursday night shows. Thursday night shows every week starting at either 6 or 7 p.m. Again, some of those details will change. I need to read up on my Morag Tong lore. That's obviously Morrowind, but I really need to learn my Morrowind lore a lot better. Today is Thursday indeed, Chris. I understand you've been really busy. I know you've been very busy around the holiday. What? Unless you're just like Jonas living in the future. That's also possible. Jonas, is it Friday for you or not yet? Jonas, it was 2025 for Jonas before it was 2025 for any of us, which is pretty cool. So there you go. Yeah, it's Friday. See? It's Friday, Chris. You got it. It's Friday somewhere. All right. Oh, congrats. I hope it's been splendid. Where'd you go? Let me know. Where'd you go off to? So that's another thing is admittedly, I'm going to miss. I'm putting air quotes around miss. I want this to be weekly, but admittedly I might miss one episode because I am going on vacation. Staycation. Beautiful. I love it. That's what I did for New Year's Eve. Stayed home. It's wonderful. I loved it. It was great. this 60-year-old mindset in a much younger body. Monad is you're halfway through Friday. Well, Gray Monad, you're further in the future than all of us then. Is it Chrome? Is it Chrome yet? Do we have flying cards? Cards. Cars, Monad? And if not, get on that. Alright, next bite-sized story. We did the Ubisoft NFT game. For fans of indie games. If you're a fan of indie games, one call-out that I did want to give was Deltarune. Deltarune is a game that's being made by Toby Fox. If you don't know who Toby Fox is, he is behind Undertale, which is a phenomenal indie game. Now, if you are interested, you can play Deltarune Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. They're both out for free. However, Toby Fox has confirmed that Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 are going to be releasing in 2025, albeit at an undisclosed date. He didn't say specifically when. So I highly recommend, if you're into the indie gaming scene and you have not played Undertale, check to see if it's your type of game. It's more than meets the eye, and it is one of the best indie games ever made, with some of the best music ever made. Look up if you like soundtrack music, I highly recommend 10 out of 10. Look up either just the flat out Undertale soundtrack, or look up covers of Undertale. Like, there's this really cool metal versions out there of Megalovania. But Deltarune 1 and 2, chapters 3 and 4, are coming out. So do check that out if you're interested, and you need a small indie game to play, and both of those are free. So if you're not overwhelmed by some of the games you might have gotten for the holidays, or you just want something new to try out that you're not, don't be a genrephobe. I saw that recently in relation to music. Don't play a genrephobe. Try Undertale. That's another one of my goals for 2025. Try more games than I normally. Went to Dave Landau Comics Center. I'll have to look that up. I know. Oh! Now I'll definitely have to look it up. Let's see if I can find it, because I don't know what you look like. New Yorkie is overrated. Fills me with dread. I prefer to sleep through it. That's pretty much what I did. Look, I got some tea. I got a bowl of ice cream. I put on an episode of Peacemaker, which, if you haven't watched Peacemaker, it's pretty good. Not James Gunn's best work, but it's entertaining. Took me to like episode 5, and then I was like, you know what? I'm invested now. TV show shouldn't take that long to get you invested, but there you go. Pretty good. And I had tea. I had ice cream. I had that. Played a board game. It's a wonderful night. Didn't need to go out. I can have a night out any night. Why New Year's Eve? Don't blame me, Slowlark. People are complaining they have too many games to play. Speaking of too many games to play, Supermarket Simulator. I didn't do a segment like what I've been playing in the start of this episode. Supermarket Simulator. Check that out. It's wonderful. Wonderful game. So addicting. If you need something zen, something to just calm your mind, that's probably what I'll be doing after the show. Some Supermarket Simulator. There you go. Alright, bite-sized story. Next one. The last bite-sized story we have, the Skyblivion update. So, Skyblivion is releasing in 2025. They're getting really close. In fact, not only are they getting really close, they have 93% of the landscaping for all of it is done. And for those of you who don't know, the map of Oblivion is actually bigger than the map of Skyrim. I think it's a third bigger than what Skyrim's map is. Now, a lot of that is more empty spaces, and you also have less dungeons, but it worked for Oblivion, right? At the time, I mean, the game came out in 2005, so cut it some slack. And it was one of the most revolutionary open world games of its time. And that's why people still play it and still mod it, actually, to this day. Hence why we're getting Skyblivion. Now, one of the big concerns... Oh, well, how else is Skyblivion doing? Well, there's only 6... I believe it said there was... In the recent development update, it said that there were only 6 untouched dungeons remaining. I'm actually going to pull up... Let's do this here. We're going to try to work on having some of this ready to go a little bit better. The pros and cons of doing this live. Pro, I get to interact with all of you guys. con is I can't just put a lot of this edited in post. So
Hey, you're finally awake.
we're just gonna mute that there, and then we're going to let's see if we can't get. Okay, not yet apparently. I would like to have the window for I'd like to have the window. I apologize for this. I'm trying to get the window for the trailer to show up. Maybe I could just do it this way. 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. So, Skyblivion, right, let's get back onto it. So, Skyblivion, most of it is done, which is really cool. One of the biggest things they have left to do is nav meshing. And for those of you who don't know, nav meshing is basically where they need to make sure that everything can be implemented into the game in such a way that the NPCs, the quests work, people can get around where they need to be. Kyle is going to knock on your door and deliver Skyblivion hot and fresh while wearing the Dragonborn helmet. I wish Kyle knew who I was, but I don't talk about Skyblivion enough, so it's on me too. There you go. But it's a massive project, and of course it's all entirely done by fans. Now, one of the concerns that does arise from this is, what about the the Oblivion remake that is rumored to be happening, right? So recently, a lot of these rumors came back in 2013, or 2023, excuse me, 2013. 2023, a lot of rumors started popping up. There was a Virtuos ex-employee that had come out and mentioned, hey, here's some of the projects we're working on. The biggest of those leaks was Oblivion, excuse me. And Oblivion, they didn't at the time know whether or not it was going to be a full-on remaster or a full-on remake, which is pretty weird considering that that's a huge decision, and they were already making decisions like how they were going to do it, and that they were already going to be, they would have had to know that they were going to be moving to Unreal 5, because of course one of the rumors that ties into that is it's going to blend what the creation engine does with Unreal 5 and sort of the physics and all that stuff to make it work in that engine. So when you're already making such a massive shift and you have to build the game out in a brand new engine, it seems like you would probably understand, hey, this is going to be a full-on remake. So at the time, there were a lot of big questions around whether or not there was some validity to the leak. Recently, it did sort of resurface for a couple reasons. But one of the main things is that there were some insiders who were mentioning, one in particular that does have, and I don't remember the name, one in particular that does have mixed credibility. I can actually find the name for you here. Let's pull that up. It was Extasis EXTAS1S. Noted for making predictions on Game Pass, some accurate predictions on Game Pass, but frequently, it's said that they have walked back on several things. They made an incorrect prediction about South of Midnight appearing at, I think, the Game Awards, maybe Summer Games Fest. So the accuracy is, let's just be generous and say 75 correct, 25 wrong. I would maybe lean closer to 50-50, but I haven't looked into it in depth enough for that. So someone with mixed credibility came out and said, hey, this is probably going to appear. Of course, if something like an Oblivion remake came out officially, would probably be something that releases also on Game Pass. So does that add to credibility to this individual in particular leaking it? Possibly. And it was mentioned that we would see it this month with a release date sometime this year. does Skyblivion have anything to worry about? Well, certainly I understand why the team, Kyle and so on, would be a little bit more worried about such a thing, because they've spent years on this. It's all made by fans. They're volunteering. They're not getting paid to do any of this. And now you have something official that, of course, is going to be a lot more broadly applicable, because it can be played on all systems, right? That's one of the major caveats with, and I just want to pause here, actually. You could see the attention to detail that they're going into, where they're, again, a mod project, but making all of the different regions feel unique, going back into the realms of Oblivion and making each of those. If you played Oblivion, whenever you go into an Oblivion gate, it was basically the same thing every time. Now they're making each of them unique, and if they have the time, they're going to continue that. There's one really cool quest where you go into a painting-like world that you could see here, and they've had to completely recreate that, and they're making everything a lot more lore-friendly. They're rebuilding the cities. They're redoing all 200 dungeons in the game to be more lore-friendly, but also more interesting and diverse, and each of them will be unique, right? Some of those qualities that Skyrim was able to bring into it. So, one, if Bethesda and Virtuos, which is a studio rumored to be working on this remake or remaster, is only doing a remaster, then it's really going to kick them in the butt. They probably are not doing just a remaster because of Skyblivion, which is maybe a bit of a negative take to have, right? You'd want to think that, hey, they're doing whatever they're planning, but it would be a little bit of a shame if Skyblivion did it better than whatever Virtuos and Bethesda officially is working on. So I believe this is going to be a full-on remaster. Will it affect Skyblivion? Yes and no. I think people who are going to have access to Skyblivion will definitely give it a try, because of course a lot of those folks who are playing on PC who would even download a mod such as this are probably bigger Elder Scrolls fans to begin with, versus we know that everything is an Xbox. This is an Xbox. This is an Xbox. This is an Xbox, right? That's an Xbox. Everything's an Xbox. So therefore, if you're playing the official Oblivion remaster, you can do it on any system. And so that's where it really benefits for console players. And admittedly, I think the two can coexist, if I'm being completely... I'm an Xbox. You're an Xbox. We're all big Xboxes. Monad, you are an Xbox. Now the real question is, who's the biggest Xbox of them all? Who knows? Is it Phil Spencer? Spoiler, I don't think so. You could see here in the footage that's playing how they've redid some of the weapons just before. It's really neat what the Skyblivion team is doing. So what I appreciate about it is I think that both of these experiences can coexist, especially because Skyblivion, of course, isn't going to be available on all of these other systems. Cole is there you go. Cole is the biggest Xbox. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for Cole. He's the biggest Xbox. Nobody question it. That's just the way it is. Go cry about it. You know, the official remaster will not have 100% reimagined dungeons. If it has to, right? It has to. They can't do what they did in Oblivion, though. They just simply can't do what they did in Oblivion. It would be absurd. It would be completely and utterly insane if that's what they tried to do. Just saying. So, really looking forward to both projects and sort of what they can bring to the table. All right. Next, we're jumping into Judas and AAA game stagnation. Now, I mentioned how I wanted to have sort of a bigger topic for each of these stories. We've already, roughly this podcast would end about 8 o'clock, so we're already more than halfway through. There you go. But Ken Levine recently had a really interesting interview. It was on gamesindustry.biz, where it was called The Future of Storytelling with Ken Levine, and he discussed things like generative AI, stepping away from BioShock, as well as some of what games are struggling with in the modern day. And I thought this was a really cool opportunity to have a bit more of an intellectual gaming on discussion. Intellectual gaming on discussion. Break that one down in your heads. It makes sense. Don't question it. So, Judas is looking like a really ambitious project. For the reason alone that Monad is the Xbox. I don't. Cole already claimed it, so you guys can duke that one out in chat, and I'll drink to the winner. Tea and Absinthe. Check them out. Not sponsored. They're just really good tea flavors. They have one that's amazing called, I think it's Irish whiskey cream or something like that. Ooh, beautiful. It's one of my favorite teas I've had in a while. Sumo. I saw live sumo wrestling, actually. It was very entertaining. Don't question, sumo's cool. There you go. See? Tea and Absinthe. Holly supports it. There you go. Thank you, that blue number. Wonderful. I'm drinking the road so far, and it's wonderful. It's maple, blackberry and maple, I believe. Black tea. It's fantastic. Every week we'll have a new tea to try. That's the goal. From different places. So, Ken Levine with Judas. Judas is looking like a really ambitious game for a lot of reasons. One, it sort of has all of the things that we want from BioShock without being BioShock, right? And it takes place in, I think, a bit of a really cool setting for what Ken Levine wants to do. Just the ship is going down, you're trying to get off it. And of course, we know that one of the biggest influences for the game is how they're going to try to navigate choice and consequence. And can they do that in a way that's different from what games have been doing for quite a long time? That's where Ken Levine thinks that AAA gaming has stagnated quite a lot, because it's one of the most unique things about gaming is the way that it takes player choice. And you do have certain elements. For example, there is a new, it's pretty cool actually. They have like a live theater version of D&D that they play on stage, and the audience can sort of influence. I've never personally seen it. I think it's called Taverns and something. But the audience can influence how the story plays out, and then the actors on stage will react accordingly. And it's a pretty cool concept, but that sort of choice and consequence is unique, really, to gaming. And there have been some attempts, like Black Mirror on Netflix did sort of a choose your own adventure style. But where it really gets, and then of course, when it comes to gaming itself, if you look at the core root of gaming, you have a lot of decision trees. Think of something along the lines of Detroit Become Human, and they have sort of that butterfly effect where you can see all the paths. When you get to the end of a chapter, you see all the branching paths that you could have gone down. I agree with what Ken Levine is saying, that choice and consequence in games have sort of hit a bit of a flat point. And what I mean by that really is that it's just less interesting, in my opinion, than it has, because the novelty has worn thin a bit. There's certain games that captured it really well. I believe that Mass Effect 3, for example, or even Dragon Age Inquisition to a lesser extent. But Mass Effect 3 did it phenomenally. The Witcher 3, I thought, did it very well also. Some Telltale games, but of course the problem with Telltale games was they always sort of just did this, right? They just always came full circle no matter what your choices are. If you kept this character alive, they die 2 episodes later, 2 chapters later. So everything sort of always came full circle with a lot of those experiences, because they're so focused on the narrative and they need to make sure that the narrative works. Ken's idea, and you guys tell me if you agree with this, yes or no. Ken's idea for how to innovate on choice and consequence in games is by having more reactivity from the NPCs. And the way he quoted it in this interview was interesting, because he didn't say anything. Maybe he has it in mind and it wasn't just vocalized through this interview that well. But what he says is, quote, "The approach we're taking with Judas is heavily based upon recognition of player action and response to player action. Even just characters observing a long range of player action and commenting on it. Hey, you saw this, and you did that, and then you did this, and that was interesting because that caused that." We're doing that kind of stuff right now, and it's really just observing the players and then writing the types of lines that could react to various types of things. It's a huge amount of work, because you have to think of all the things a player can do and then write in-game character responses for different characters to choose those actions in a way that feels organic. You can do individual moments like a Mad Lib filling in the blank, so an orc comes to you and puts you on a quest to find X. Those feel boring and RNG, or random number generated. But once you start observing sequences of events, having characters observe, you did this, and then you did that, and that caused this, and I'm mad because it did that, that's where it really gets interesting. That's the space that we've been exploring. Now, agree or disagree, here it is, yes or no. We've already seen that in games. Maybe not to the extent that he wants to capture. But even Skyrim did that in 2011. That was the basis of the guard dialogue. When you, not to the extent he's mentioning, right? But you make certain choices in the game. You join the Dark Brotherhood. A guard will whisper to you, "Hail Sithis," right? If you become a companion, they'll comment, "Oh, you smell like a wet dog," once you get the werewolf transformation from the companion's quest line. That's the NPCs reacting to things that you've done. When you have, for example, you could argue, and again, not to the extent that I know Ken Levine is talking about, but you could even argue scripted things such as once you hit a certain level, you get a message from the Jarl of Falkreath, and he says, "Hey, come to my hold. You're a man of some renown, and I know what you're doing. And I've heard of you, and the rumors are true, and you should come and serve me." And he sends you a letter, and you go off, and then you become the Thane of Falkreath, and you do, right? That might have actually been, I don't know if that was introduced in the Hearthfire DLC, or if that's in the base game. Can't remember, because I haven't played without those DLCs in such a long time. But that stuff already existed. Again, not to the extent that he's mentioning. But it already exists. So, what is the next step then? Is it really just, you could say, well, hey, the player, look, again, to use Skyrim as an example, hey, the player stole from X NPC, so then you get the Dark Brotherhood assassin that comes after you, or the thieves that come after you, the mercenaries that come after you, and when you kill the mercenaries, they'll have that signed note that says, "Hey, we know that, like, such and such stole from me, go get it back, kill him if you deem it necessary, signed whatever NPC." That's, hey, you did this, and that made me upset, so therefore that. They would need to do it a little bit deeper. Let's just see for a second what you guys are saying here. Let me pull up chat. I think they need to introduce AI into... So he comments on AI. We're going to get into AI at a certain point. That stuff plateaued pretty hard at a certain point. It did. It's just what BGS did. Favor the bow. I'm a swordsman myself. Exactly that. Cole, I know. Skyrim is still... I still go back and play Skyrim. It's an amazing game. I don't want that in the background. Let's get through here a bit. We'll play that again. He refuses. I think they need to introduce AI. See, imagine going to a sword maker in another town. You try to buy something. He refuses and finds out from someone else you killed his brother, but he has something you need to do for a quest. How do you get it? He actually comments on AI. So if we take a look at AI, the problem that he has, and I agree again with Ken Levine. Now, it's interesting because Ken Levine, in the past, there's some reports that came out about him that says how he's incredibly difficult to work with because he has a vision and it needs to stick to that vision, and he will reiterate 100 times until he kind of sees what he wants, because they develop a whole level, he scraps it, he's like, nope, not good, that's not what I want. And then, so it's been said he's pretty hard to work with, but as a result, yes, maybe that is the case, but as a result, we've gotten some really great games with BioShock and BioShock Infinite, of course, right? So that creative mindset can sometimes be difficult when it's a true creative. So I think that Ken Levine overall has some pretty good insights. But he says when it comes to AI, the issue around AI, one is there's still some legal uncertainty around how it can be used. So especially sourcing images. So he said that they're not using, and if you're against AI in a similar way, I don't have a problem with AI personally. I think, for example, I try not to use it. I did for maybe a single thumbnail or two. But then I stopped because I was like, I actually didn't like using it. But I think if you're like a small channel that really can't afford to pay an artist and you're like, hey, I'm going to use AI, the problem is you're stealing from artists. because that's of course how those images get generated, because it's even if you want to use AI generated music in your videos, because that's becoming a little bit more popular, it's just taking what's already there. I don't need to get into that discussion. I'm sure you've all heard it a million times. But I don't want to use AI in my stuff for that reason. Ken Levine says similar things. He's like, there's some legal issues around it. I'm not impressed by what it can do, is the other part that he mentions, because he says that AI can't do something, it can't draw a consistent line, right? So he mentions an example of if you try to get a video of somebody walking and then they turn around. When that person turns around, the scene around them might completely change because the AI doesn't really understand what it's supposed to be doing. It can't have that consistent thread that pulls it through. So he mentions, he says, try to find a well-written AI story that goes, even for writing, that goes with a 3-point arc, that goes and hits all, just tells a good story. We have things like Disney's Encanto that came out recently. If anybody's seen that, I haven't. But I've heard that it just feels like AI generated slop, right? Compared to, for example, if anybody's seen The Wild Robot, which was beautiful. It was a really good film, animated film. It doesn't feel like AI. Like, you could just tell. It feels formulaic. It feels generic. And that's sort of the problem with introducing AI into quest writing. I know that a lot of people are really impressed because they have mods for Skyrim where you can have all the NPCs and you could actually talk to them and then they will respond accordingly. That I think is pretty cool, pretty neat. If I'm being honest, but the issue with it is that it can get samey, it can get confused. So in order to do these things, it's not really where it yet needs to be. I have recently been about the mind AI could be a great tool to use for elevating procedural generation, at least something to get the devs started on an open world or linear level design. Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, in game development, one of the coolest things about in-game development that it can be used for is really bug testing. That they can train AI models to go through if they're trying to find specific issues or they're trying to repeat a certain section, right? Even Todd Howard mentioned that that's how they use it. I'm not saying use it for creative, but it can be used for mapping out how NPC reactions. You still need humans to go through the data sets and correct stuff. That's true, yes. So you can map out. That's ultimately where it comes down to with AI and its current form, is that you can map it out to do all these broad conceptual things, but then you still need that human element behind it. And I think that's where it really struggles. So moral of the story is I'm glad that Ghost Story Games and Ken Levine is straying away from it. I think that's the right decision. If it is to get implemented a little bit more, there's still some time to go. But ultimately, that rules out, to get back to the topic at hand, if that rules out, hey, you can't use AI to really map NPC reactions because it just doesn't do a good enough job. If you can't have, if we're sitting here saying that NPC reactivity on the scale that Ken Levine is talking about isn't anything that's really revolutionary, how do games innovate in 2025? What is the next step? And I don't have the answer. I wish I did. I could say things that I personally think that games can innovate, honestly, in their storytelling. I think that a lot, and in the way that they design their worlds. You could argue that, while it's not necessarily a new concept, but you could argue, love or hate the game, the way that The Last of Us Part 2 did its world and how it was spaced out, I'm not saying it's innovative, but that was a new approach that a lot of studios started to adapt and try to take on. That's what Jedi Survivor did, and I thought it worked really well for that game. That's what Indiana Jones and the Great Circle did. I think it worked really well for that game. I do believe that choice and consequence is something that is the strongest area of opportunity, which ties back to writing, which is why I think writing can keep improving there. Yeah, so how many times, this was the last point I wanted to raise, is how many times have you gotten to the end of a game and you just get met with, here's a PowerPoint presentation of how all of your choices really affected everything. They did that for the extended cut. Unpopular opinion for a second here. Hold on, let me get unpopular opinion. I don't believe that the extended cut of extended ending for Mass Effect 3 actually made it that much better. I think that I also think that the 3 endings for Mass Effect were oddly poetic in a way. It's like the Joker movie. Has anybody seen Joker Folie à Deux? The movie itself wasn't good, but the messages behind it and sort of the more moral points that it raised. Lotus! Hello, Lotus. Welcome and thank you for stopping by to episode 1 of the Push Start podcast. We're going to be trying to get this live every week on Thursday, sponsored by Plain White Mug and Absinthe and Tea. Not actually. But thank you for stopping by here. From the Renegade Realm podcast, which if any of you don't watch the Renegade Realm podcast, you can check that out Tuesdays, another live show that I do over on Red Wolf Renegade's channel. Red, feel free to plug a link to your channel in the chat. But every Tuesday at 6 p.m. we go live there. Thursdays at 6, maybe 7 p.m. We're still figuring out aspects of this show. Still working on it. But you can tune in here on Thursdays. I'll have something going at one of those 2 times. Keep an eye out. I'm excited to get this started for the new year. Never played Mass Effect. Also never watched a video on it. Paul! Stop watching. Leave my stream. Go buy it. It's probably on sale for like $7 right now. And fix your life. Fix it. Here, wait. You know what? Get close. Come here. Come here. Yeah. Come here. Fix it. A big factor is also the structure of companies. Sure, AI can speed up individual process, but you still have those meetings that could have just been an email. Yes, exactly that. We know that Bethesda's struggling with that right now, right? The 472 on Steam. Cole! 472! Go buy it. You know what, Cole? Actually, Cole, don't buy it. If you play on Steam, I'm gonna buy it for you. Send me. If you follow me on Twitter, I think you follow me on Twitter. If you don't, go on Twitter, DM me. I'm getting you that if you play on Steam. What was I saying? It's been a day. Don't put on Green Day. I'll start laugh crying. You know what song always gets me like that, actually, is The Black Parade, I think it's called, by My Chemical Romance? 21 Pilots? Welcome to the Black Parade? That song always gets me for some reason. Every time. Anyway, right. Innovation in games. So, it's not just about that. Instead, the full amount. Next step is living worlds. No empty, pointless living in a world, but an actual living world where NPCs get hurt. Yes, get hurt, say a blacksmith, so when you get to the general store, you can only buy 2 arrows. Living, breathing, that would be really, really impressive. Those small, I think, you know what, Chris, you actually hit a really good point. You hit a phenomenal point, and that is exactly that. Those smaller micro elements bleed into it more, which Oblivion actually used to do really well, because like Starfield doesn't have character schedules, but Oblivion did. So I still wonder why they went back on that. Lotus, thank you so much for the power. We have to remember the deep lore for these characters, because I can't remember. I cannot remember what these characters are, but thank you for the robot hippo, Lotus. I appreciate support. I appreciate you being here for episode 1. Thank you so much. I'm gonna start laugh crying again. But yeah, I think those micro details are really Lotus, Lotus, you are always among you and Chris, both of you two. Thank you guys so much for the amount of support that you show for us doing this. And honestly, it cannot be overstated. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, the structure of companies too, I think, creates a lot of problem as well. It's okay, guys. He only really listens to movie soundtracks. I'm getting over that. I'm listening to TV show soundtracks, but actually, James Gunn. I know we have some James Gunn paters, especially if Holly's still here. But you can go on Spotify and you could look up James Gunn, and it just shows. What is it? It just shows his like my favorite songs of 2024. It's a banger list. Listen to the Peacemaker soundtrack. They're all licensed songs in the Peacemaker soundtrack, but ooh, some good ones in there. I need to watch Peaky Blinders. I really do. I really do need to watch. I'll sip my tea. Chat. You heard nothing. You heard nothing. All right. Yeah, okay. So the only last note I have regarding Judas, you know, the end screens. I mentioned the end screens, but currently what a lot of games do is really just you know, hey, you get to that end screen, it's a title card, and it says, oh, you killed this character, or this character did blah 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 blah, or whatever. Kind of boring stuff for a lot of those end screens, in my opinion. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Ken Levine does with Judas. More agency. He mentions just a couple last notes. Oh, I wanted to bring this up before because it was... Who brought it up? Was it Cole? Slowlark. Slowlark brought it up, I believe. Cash cows. This is a scary way that the industry is going, in my opinion. We do see the rise. I'm not going to dive too deep into this because it's been talked about by a lot smarter people than I in the past. But there's an ongoing rise, which I'm very excited about, of AA and indie games that's going on in the industry right now because AAA game budgets have ballooned. Ken Levine does talk about this in his interview. He says that, you know, just take a normal door. Normal door is much harder because there's so many more polygons. If you're putting ray tracing on it, you need to do that. You have to, you know, map out the physics if the door is going to have its own unique physics to it. That's just a bunch of different factors. 10 times more factors go into making a door than it did 10 years ago today, right? So because of all of that, games are getting more expensive to make and studios aren't willing to take risks. But what he said, and I brought this up earlier, was that he was grateful for juggernauts like Red Dead Redemption, but GTA, which I believe they said is expected to make $1 billion. It recently came out within its first year of being out. One of the biggest game launches ever in history. It's already being panned before that game has come out. What honor must it be? I mean, you know for a fact that reviewers are already sitting there like writing their reviews. Oh, it's amazing. It's game of the year. We love it. IGN has the entire review scripted already. They just played Grand Theft Auto 5 again. And they said, yeah, these things will probably carry over. And then they're just going to tweak it out and write GTA 6 in a couple spots. It's pure study of don't copy my homework. Change some things. So, Grand Theft Auto 6, going to be a massive project. But games like that help to fuel some of the smaller projects. And that's exactly what we saw with Obsidian and Grounded. It's what we saw with Obsidian and Pentiment. And ideally that would be the case, especially for studios like Bethesda too. It would be nice if Bethesda, it would be nice to see EA, which EA shutting down titles like Star Wars 1313. We have some more microtransaction-y projects. They just released Star Wars, that mobile game, Star Wars Hunters or something. I think it's on PC too. But those are some, I tried it out. I wasn't really a huge fan of it. But these massive projects, that's really where it should be funded. And then you could take a lot of these creative people. I think one of the biggest issues we also have is just a mass exodus of employees from these AAA studios. And as a result, you're losing a lot of talent. You're getting a lot of new talent, and they have to be trained, and they need to build that experience. They need to build that thicker skin that comes with working in the games industry. But unfortunately, it leaves a lot of worry for us as fans. If you look at what people are saying about the next Mass Effect game, Mass Effect 4, people are worried, and reasonably so, because yeah, you have some folks like Trick Weeks who are still there. You do have Mike Gamble, who's returned to the project to work on it, but a lot of folks are gone, including with you see those same comments echoed with The Witcher 4. A lot of people have left, so they get a bit nervous, and they say, well, what's going to be next for this studio? How are they going to move forward? They don't know exactly. You're just not the same people. And so one way you could try to alleviate that definitively is by saying, hey, we do have this massive Star Wars game that they're working on. And because we have this massive Star Wars game that we're working on, we have Grand Theft Auto 6 that we're working on. We know Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to make a lot of money. Let's bring it up. Imagine EA's struggling, right? Picture this. Who's played the original Star Wars Battlefront games? By pandemic. Battlefront 1, Battlefront 2. Phenomenal. You can still play them to this day. It's still fun to go back and play Battlefront 2. Those games, you look at and you say, all right, if EA said, you know what? We're just going to rip that off. We're going to bring back Galactic Conquest. We're going to bring back the space battles in the way that they were, where you're destroying the capital ship. We're going to bring back playing against the bots in the full way that you could. We're going to do all the eras. We're going to do the Galactic Civil War, the Clone Wars, and the sequel. And maybe, hell, throw in some High Republic stuff, because that's where it's leaning. And they just said, we're going to shamelessly try to make what Battlefront 3 by pandemic was supposed to be. That's a game that would do really well. You know that's a game that would do really well. Unless they EA it up with microtransactions, among other things. But you can use that. You can use that in order to fuel Dead Space. And Dead Space can be smaller in scope. That's okay. That's fine. Maybe it would be a step back for hardcore fans of the franchise, but you still had 2 million sales from a Dead Space remake, and that's a remake. I know it did a lot differently than what the original game did, and it changed quite a few elements, but that's something that people have already played, especially in a busy year for games. 2024 was a great year for games. 2025 is going to be a great year for games too. Really excited about all the stuff that we're going to be seeing. Fable, Avowed, Judas, South of Midnight, Skyblivion. Those prices are for Mass Effect Legendary Edition, by the way. Gotcha. Now I bring up all the good comments. Cole, you only give good comments. 479 on PlayStation, $5.99 on Xbox, or included with Game Pass Ultimate. Don't tell that fool. Peacemaker is very good. We'll hear Black Sails and want to play Sea of Thieves again. I want to play Sea of Thieves again. Let's play Sea of Thieves after this. You're going to go to bed. Games used to be made by like 10 guys who wore 5 different hats, then 50, then 100. At some point, it's not a tight crew, and that's coming up with cool ideas anymore. I think that's one of the major issues with AAA studios today. And that's what we're sort of seeing with... The problem is, even in the indie space, a lot of games aren't safe, right? Even in the indie space, you look at something like Immortals of Avium, which some people liked, some people didn't. But you look at something like Immortals of Avium, and it just... They had to lay off team members. And it's unfortunate, and it sucks to see. But that was a game with some really credible talent who came from BioWare. Look at Nightingale. That was former BioWare devs. It just didn't work. Or was Immortals of Avium was EA. They worked on Battlefield, I believe. So, Nightingale. BioWare developers said, hey, we're going to make this survival fantasy game. And that didn't work out as well as they would have hoped. So, the industry's just cutthroat right now, and it is hard to break through because there's so much. All right, so spending budgets, we did this. Let's go into our next topic here, which is Skyblivion update. We actually already covered most of Skyblivion's update. I had that as part of the bite-size updates, but that was actually one of our main stories for today. So let me know if you're excited for Skyblivion. Are you more excited for Skyblivion or, and let's make this a poll actually. What excites you more? Skyblivion official remake from Bethesda / Virtues. Alright. Let me know what you guys are feeling there. I personally, I think I'm more excited for Skyblivion just because we've been seeing it. We've seen the amount of work that goes into it. But we've already talked about Skyblivion, so we can move on to one of our last things for today. In other news. So this is a little segment where I wanted to dive into things outside of gaming. And basically, if there was going to be a point where I really interact with you guys and let you drive the conversation, this would be that time. Additionally, if you are watching this as a video on demand, leave your comments down below or tweet at me at Damarco Dude. You can see that below my name right here. You could tweet at me, and if you do tweet at me, use hashtag PS Podcast. That way I will see it. Hashtag PS Podcast makes it easy for me to filter and find it in the future. But if you're watching this, leave a comment down below on this episode, and that way I can bring it up in future episodes, and we can have discussion points around those. But additionally, whatever is in chat, we could sort of have you guys drive the conversation. So I'm going to start. Are either these slated to be coming to consoles? No, PC only, unfortunately, because you do need to. Kyle will come to your room and install it personally. He will lean in and whisper, "It just works" in Dutch. I wish Kyle would do that. Kyle, listen, Kyle can join me for a stream where I play Skyblivion for the first time, and I will help. Can't probably afford it, but I'll help fund his plane ticket to come here to do that if he wanted to. It would be awesome to meet Kyle in person. Such a cool dude. He's such a cool dude. You can check him out streaming all the time. The development of Skyblivion, if you're interested. You could find them on Twitch at Rebelzize, REBELZIZE. You can find them on Twitter and then see them streaming the development of Skyblivion, which is really, really neat. But in other news, want to talk about things outside of the gaming industry. First and foremost, and this isn't meant to be a long section. Again, it's really meant to be fueled by you guys in the chat, but it just gives some intermediary topics so you could learn a bit about who I am outside of it. We do have the Batman 2. Batman 2 was delayed until 2027, I believe. Or 2026. Now, 2026. Yep. So we have another year delay on the Batman Part 2, which is a bit unfortunate as a massive fan of Matt Reeves. If you have not watched, where is it? Is it on my shelf still? Right here. There it is. I keep it close by because it's important. This is one of my favorite film trilogies of all time. I absolutely love it. Matt Reeves did the second and third, Dawn and War, and coincidentally, I love all three of them equally, actually. It's hard to pick which one of these is my favorite, but they're phenomenal movies. I highly recommend you watch them if you want to see the type of films that I like. I think they're just a great time. Matt Reeves, of course, directed The Batman, which I think is a phenomenal take on the character. I thought Robert Pattinson did a wonderful job. I thought the casting all around was good. And the second one's... Dawn... I'm torn between... I really like Dawn because I think what Dawn captures for me of these movies is just like the perfect... I mean, all three of them together makes the full experience, but Dawn, I think, really captures like the perfect hero arc. If you've ever looked at movie discussions on Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, and why that's one of the best movies ever made, let alone one of the best superhero movies, it's because it's just the perfect hero's journey. Perfect hero's journey. And I think Matt Reeves actually did a phenomenal job with that in Dawn specifically. So it holds a special place. I also, every single time, I like war because I like the theme. I like the setting. I like the cold, and I like seeing... I think as far as revenge stories go, if you hated The Last of... This is going to be a really abstract... If you hated The Last of Us Part 2, if you hated The Last of Us Part 2, you can watch these movies and understand that a revenge story can be good. It can be, because it's right here. There. This one. It's all three of them. It builds. It's earned. It's warranted. Seriously, check this one out. But anyway, my concern is that for Batman Part 2, that can be. Listen, Chris, 1000%. You can't knock. I have that. Should be here too. Honestly, that might be on like a wall of fame somewhere in my room, but no, you cannot. I don't think you could beat the Christopher Nolan. I see that there's a lot of people joining. Let me just do a quick call out to this while there's a lot of people here. Welcome to the Push Start Podcast, episode 1. Sorry if you've already heard. As soon as you say that, it just drops. Welcome to episode 1, weekly show, Thursdays, 6 or 7 p.m. We're still figuring out a time. We're still figuring out a structure. But my one goal for 2025 is to have this consistent every single week. So if you want to stop by, hang out, chat, say hello, it's meant to be I have this segment in particular. We're in part 4 in other news. This is meant to be the dialogue with you guys, right? So we're not talking about gaming stuff specifically. We're talking about other things. We went through the gaming news that I wanted to cover. But thank you all so much for stopping by. Thank you for hanging out with me here tonight. But yeah, absolutely, the Dark Knight trilogy is among the best. I don't know if you could really do Batman a lot better. I mean, maybe you can, but I think you could do it maybe not better, but different. The problem is Heath Ledger. You can't beat Heath Ledger. It's impossible. Nobody should try, and thankfully they're not trying. That's why they went in the direction they did with Zack Snyder, David Ayer's Joker, whatever that was, Jared Leto. But I'm hoping that they're not trying to merge it into James Gunn's universe. That's my concern. I like James Gunn. I know that there's some James Gunn naysayers here. I personally like James Gunn. I think that Guardians of the Galaxy is some of the best stuff that Marvel has done, including Volume 3, which of course came in an era where Marvel has really kind of... sorry, it has. Everything after Infinity War. But James Gunn I thought was good. Creature Commandos on HBO Max. Check that out. It's one of my favorite shows right now. I look forward to it every week. In fact, there's a new episode today. Batman shows up in it. Apparently, I saw that. So, spoiled all that for you guys. A little bit. He gets like a cameo. Speaking of, Creature Commandos is doing TV stuff right now. So, Creature Commandos got renewed for a season 2. Which, of course, James Gunn is the CEO of DC Studios. So, the fact that he approved his own project... I don't know. Maybe that doesn't really... It's like, hey, it's literally just a TikTok skit when everybody's just talking to themselves to go, we got the money for this? Yeah, we can make it work. Thanks. Into Bat Vader. Grey Monad, please explain what that would look like. Gordon, yeah, listen, Gary Oldman was phenomenal. Red, thank you for the $2 super chat. When are you going through the Witcher books again? Not for a while, because I have tons of other books to go through. I'm finishing up part 1. I have the Stormlight Archive books right here. 1 is missing because I have about 100-ish more pages left. Then I'm going through this. This is Forward as Always. It's a book by Olin Rogers. Olin Rogers is my favorite animator. He did Final Space. Final Space was canceled. He also did a free... If you want to know the type of animation I like too, or some of my other things, check out Godspeed on YouTube. It's a free 30-minute, kind of like a pilot episode, but it was backed by Kickstarter. I'm actually a producer on that, which is pretty cool. But Olin Rogers he wrote a book. He wrote a book. So this is what I'm diving into next. And then before I start The Witcher again, I have to get through 2 more 1,200-page books. Halfway done with book 3. Cole, which is your favorite book so far? You're halfway done, so maybe you can't judge book 3. I know a lot of people like usually book 1 because to the Exodus audiobook. Exodus like the game? There's an Exodus audiobook for the game? 2? Okay. Yeah, I know he just released, what, book 5 out of 7 or something like that for the Stormlight Archive? I will have to check that out. Exodus is a game that I've wanted to actually cover. Is it good? Let me know how it is, Chris, because if it's worth diving into, I absolutely will consider it. I have a lot of books on my to-read list, but Gary Oldman is younger than Gary New. That's amazing. It's good. All right, I'll have to check that out then, for sure. Exodus is a game that I've wanted to take a closer look at because I look at it and I go, man, this looks cool. And then I forget about it. And then I see it pop up again. I go, damn, this game looks sick. And every single time, it's like seeing it for the first thing. The 5th and final book. It's not the final. I thought you had like plans for 7 books or something. I have to remember Baptism of Fire is, I think Baptism of Fire is most people's favorite Witcher book. But I can't remember where, like, because he really changes his writing style. I think it was like 3, 4, and 5. His writing just changes. I mean, 3 and 4 I think are similar. Maybe like 5 is a bit different, but which is cool that because it's kind of like different perspectives that you're getting, as if different authors are like kind of tackling how it's written. And it's cool that Sapkowski can adapt in that way, because that's a talent to be able to change your style that dramatically in between books. But it does make them feel almost isolated in some ways, which it was hard for me because I've only read through them once, and it was hard for me to wrap my head around some of the things, especially when they're like bouncing back and forth between times and all that stuff. You know what I'm talking about. Last thing on my in other news bit was Secret Level. This is a bit of a disappointment. Arcane Realm, if he were here, I know he would agree. Secret Level did pitch a crossover Doom guy meets Master Chief episode. And they said no. Which I think that would have been badass. But unfortunately it didn't happen. And I'm not sure why. I'm not sure how a deal like that falls through. Is it just Microsoft not wanting to throw their IPs in the ring in that way? I'm not sure. Lotus, I'm having a Horizon marathon. I have never played, and they look beautiful on PS5 Pro. I finished Zero Dawn. I'm halfway in Forbidden West. It's becoming super tedious. I've heard that's the problem with Forbidden West. They went bigger. Bigger didn't mean better. That's why I got bored of... That is why I got bored of Horizon 1. And the story is interesting. The world is interesting. The lore is interesting. The characters are fine. I think Aloy's a good character. But it just wasn't the world just bored me. And it's one of those games, you get those activities that's like, go kill 5 deer, go kill 3 of these, complete this in 15 seconds. Gotta ignore those. Really gotta ignore those and just move on. You don't like the PlayStation controller. I will say, the controller is super heavy. The Xbox controller is so much better. When I hold these two, my PlayStation 5 controller is actually lighter. I like the PlayStation 5 controller. Do you guys have a preference of control? I'm assuming, I think if I had to guess, most of you are Xbox. If I had to guess, most of you are Xbox fans. I actually like my PlayStation controller because I'm a sucker for things like the haptic feedback. I'm sorry. I like those gimmicks. They're fun for me. I like when the triggers, I'm trying to play a game and the triggers are like harder to pull down. Mass Effect veterans are working on Mass Effect. That's why a lot of people are excited about it. That's one of the main reasons. It's a weird looking keyboard, right? It's have you never seen, it's actually a one-handed keyboard. You play like this. Right? You just gotta really, really grip your hands around this thing. Just really wrap. Helps if you play piano. You can easily manipulate and move them around as you need. Keyboard and mouse is evolving, ladies and gentlemen. Peter Hamilton wrote, I don't know what Peter Hamilton's role was in Mass Effect, but that is the main reason why folks are excited for Exodus. I need to look more into it. I know they have, if we check out, we can actually do this now. We could do this now. Let's check this out. Let's check this out right here. 1 second. This is the whole point of this segment, actually. The whole point of the segment is just to have some casual discussion as we sort of round out the show here. So, this is the website for Exodus. Choices matter. Isn't there more to it? Am I... This can't be the whole website, right? They've been doing all these development diaries. They've been doing... Whoops. Alright, well. I thought there was a lot more. Oh, wait, what? Okay, the site is being... Maybe they're doing site updates. Maybe they're being site updates. It's an indie team. Let's not... So they have all of this lore in the world, and this is also what's getting a lot of people excited about it, right? Is the rich world building that, again, because it's Mass Effect veterans, we know that they're capable of, and they've just mapped out this. When I make a D&D campaign, I do the same thing, where I'm like, let's think of all of the events that have happened in the world. So 22 AD, I like that it's set very far in the future. Fleeing a dying Earth, governments and other powerful organizations begin launching arc ships. So you almost have like a... You even have sort of a... They look similar to the Mass Effect Andromeda arcs, don't they? So you have the prologue. You could see all of these sort of creatures that you could come across. And this type of world building that people are getting invested in already is really, really unique. Tabletop. Oh, they're already making a tabletop RPG for it as well. That's very cool. That is very cool. The Awaken on the Animals. Yeah, they were like talking bears and stuff, weren't they? I don't put batteries in mine. No, I always plug mine in. Wait, you can't even put batteries in the PlayStation controller. Oh, you mean the Xbox controller? Yeah, I have. Maybe that's why. So this is why everyone's excited for it, and I don't blame them. And it looks great. It looks great if we pull up any of this. Awakened Bears. I think a lot of it's concept art that they showed in these. Yeah, it's a lot of concept art that they've shown. But once they show a little bit more gameplay, I think we'll have a better idea of exactly what this is supposed to be. But it's interesting too. Like I'm a sucker, even when I write D&D campaigns, I'm a sucker for these types of things. I'm a sucker for like when you just take a bear and you're like, yeah, the bears were all medics. They were battlefield medics. You're just like, oh, okay, like that's cool. Like there you get to see it in concept art. Like that's cool, I guess. Sure, why not? The bears are battlefield medics. I love that type of stuff. I love it. I love it. We get some gameplay here. And it looks good. Visually, too, it looks really impressive. Which, of course, you know, a lot of games, it's easier to do with... is this being built on Unreal 5? I imagine it is. Just because most games are, so my go-to... If I don't know what engine a game is being made on, it's Unreal. That's it. End of story. It's Unreal Engine. But it does look really crisp and clean. I worry a little bit about characters, just because that, I think, as far as modern game, if I had to make a gripe about modern gaming, I'd say characters are some of the weakest that we've seen in a very long time. And I'm not just talking about, like, the DEI stuff that you see with Dragon Age Inquisition that a lot of people had issues with. Oh, there you go. There's fighting the bear. Which it looks horrifying to go up against that, honestly. You have a lot of mobility, so even without having some of the traversal mechanics, like Mass Effect Andromeda did it incredibly well, where you were using that booster pack to get around really quickly. Like that, the combat in Mass Effect Andromeda, you could critique that game anyway till Sunday. The combat in that game was so much fun. It was done really well, and you kind of get a little bit of that too. It almost looks a bit more like Mass Effect meets God of War. And yes, I say that because grappling up to platforms, you're a bit more locked to the ground. But I'm done. You even have an Omniblade. It's literally just an Omniblade. So yeah, needless to say, Mass Effect fans are excited. Stealth takedowns. And then you do have some fast-paced, really animated combat, too. The motion capture looks great, also, I have to say. So, something I definitely need to pay a lot more attention to is this. My fiancée has just woken up next to me, and she said she likes the layout of your pod. No need to change just yet. Well, for her, we'll keep it for one more episode. At minimum, I'll keep it for one more episode. You know what? Actually, for her, I'll keep it till the end of January. How's that? She'll get 4. There is lore behind the space magic. That's good too. Spans over such time dilation as well. So that's the other thing I like about sort of this sci-fi. I'm a big fan of sci-fi fantasy. I think I prefer it over sort of the Starfield aesthetic, which was more of the hardcore sci-fi or the NASA punk that they went for. I just think it's more interesting. I liked the way that Mass Effect did it too. I genuinely did, where they said that, oh, you know, biotics, like, they have to be controlled by implants, and it's not just sort of space magic. There is some science behind it, even though they're playing with the term science really loosely. I'm not by any means a Mass Effect lore expert, so if someone's like, no, you're wrong, biotics are space magic, shut up, that's fine too. Maybe Red can correct me on that. I know he's the resident expert. Dragon Age character customization, unexpectedly amazing. I hope character creators, they've sort of hit a bit of a peak as well, I think. It's hard. It seems harder to make a bad character creator than it is to make a good one, if that makes any sense. Just because they've been doing it so well for years. I will say, I'm actually personally a fan of... I'm a pretty big fan of the Fallout character creator. I actually still like the Skyrim character creator. I like just being able to slide through a bunch of presets. I don't think it needs to be more complicated. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion. You have a deal? Awesome. But, Chris, maybe you'll be teaching me some Exodus lore, because I definitely do not know a lot of it. And I am excited for it. This is something I do want to keep a much closer eye on, for sure. But I think that will wrap it for tonight's episode. It's a longer one. Did plan to only go till 8 p.m. So we're 40 minutes over, but it was fun. I enjoyed this a lot. I'm excited to be doing this. And I hope that you guys will tune in, spread the word, leave a like if you enjoyed. Help share it out on social media, of course, as well. All that stuff really does help. Lancelot, you made it! Hello! Maybe you've been lurking, but it's great to see you. Go to sleep, Jonas. Go to sleep. Anyway, thank you all so much. Season characters are fun. I liked Hogwarts Legacy. I need to play Hogwarts. That's on my to-do list. That's on my, maybe when we get to like middle of January and we start getting some actual snow, that's going to be a very, very cozy game to play. I've never watched The Sopranos, Cole, and I've been told to watch it multiple times. I'm just going to make a big bowl of spaghetti. Actually, I don't really like spaghetti. I like penne. Big bowl of penne. Just gobble that up while I put some biscotti for dessert. Oh no, I'm going to get a beautiful, beautiful little cannoli. Leave that on the side. Pole penne, cannoli for dessert. 3-course meal, of course. We're gonna do soup. Gabagool. I'm gonna gabagoon the gabagool. Anyway. Thank you all so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Again, things are gonna change. The show's gonna grow and evolve over time. Be sure to leave your feedback as well. Do you like these? Do you like the style of topics? Do you like this flow where we sort of do like some smaller things out the way, 1 or 2 bigger stories, and then the side conversations? I think it flows well. I think it flows nicely. I would obviously have liked to, if I could critique one thing on the show, I would say I would have liked to have a bit more of a prepared discussion for the more in-depth topics. Again, my main focus for those is to try to bring out more industry-wide thought-provoking concepts, use the story as a branching off point to talk about the industry as a whole, which we did sort of get into, but I'd like to try to bring a little bit more intellectual sounding conversation to it, if I do say so. So anyway, thank you all so much for being here. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you all next week as well. And yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lotus, as well, for the support and the super chat earlier. It was very kind of you. Appreciate it. And good night. I don't have an end screen, so it's just going to end abruptly. But I have to stare because there is a little bit of delay. So we're going to do that for a bit. Let's get nice and close. It's been a good show. I love all of you. It's always nice hanging out. Like friends. Small family. And I'm glad that you're a part of it. All right.